Have you ever had someone look you in the eye and say, "You think you're better than me"? Well, if you're a perfectionist or an overachiever, I'm guessing this has happened more than once. Maybe it was a colleague who watched you triple check your work, a friend who saw you commit to something with discipline and diligence, or a family member who noticed the high standards that you hold yourself to. And in that moment, you probably felt confused, hurt, maybe even ashamed. Because here's the thing, you weren't thinking you were better than anyone. You were just being you, living by your standards, doing what feels right to you. But what if I told you that 87% of high achieving women report experiencing this exact accusation? And I've personally lost count of the number of times I've heard it, but I've learned a lot from it. And some of that I want to share with you today. The main thing that I've learned about this accusation, because it is an accusation, is that it's not about you at all. It's about a predictable human phenomenon that actually has nothing to do with your actual thoughts or your personal intentions. Today, I'm going to reveal the truth about why your standards trigger others, what this accusation really means, and most importantly, how to respond without dimming your light and feeling the pressure to make yourself smaller. Here's what nobody tells you about the whole "you think you're better than me" accusation, because it's not helpful feedback in any way. Not only have they presumed that they can read your mind when they say it, it's just a complete projection, a projection of their own inner world onto you. Think about it. Unless you have explicitly said, "I think I'm better than you," which, let's be honest, you haven't, how could anyone possibly know what you're thinking? And the motivations behind the standards you hold, without at least asking you, they can't know. What they're actually doing is revealing their own internal dialogue. When someone says this to you, they're essentially admitting, "When I see your standards, I feel inferior." And rather than deal with that feeling, they think, "I'm going to make it your problem." The research even backs this up, guys. This is not just from my own learned experiences. Brain imaging studies show that when people encounter high achievers, their brains literally experience threat responses. The anterior cingulate cortex in the brain, the part that processes emotional pain, lights up, and their stress hormones spike, and the whole cardiovascular system goes into overdrive. In other words, your excellence is triggering a genuine physiological threat response in their body. And instead of recognizing this as their own insecurity to work through, they just project it onto you, because it's always easier to get someone else to fix themselves than to fix you. So what's actually happening when someone accuses you of thinking you're better than them? I've perceived 4 main things are going on based on my personal experiences and those of some of my clients. The first one is envy and jealousy. When you achieve a standard they can't or won't reach, or fear they can't, it creates what psychologists call an upward social comparison. Their brain automatically compares their performance to yours, and they find themselves lacking. And this triggers genuine emotional pain and lights up the same brain regions as physical pain. The second reason is resentment. You're literally living proof that their excuses just don't hold water. When you meet deadlines that they miss, maintain standards they've abandoned, or achieve goals they've given up on, you become a walking reminder of what's possible. And rather than let that inspire them, they resent you for it. The third thing behind it is intimidation. Your competence makes them feel small. Not because you're trying to diminish them, but because they're diminishing themselves in comparison. Because of this, the majority of high achievers face something called tall poppy syndrome, where others try to cut them down to size and bring them down a notch, basically. The fourth reason behind this accusation is their own superiority complex. And this can be missed, because sometimes people who accuse you of thinking you're better than them actually believe they're better than you. Their frustration is coming from the fact that you're not recognizing this. You're not making yourself smaller in recognition of their supposed superiority. So they project their own arrogance onto you. Essentially, they want you to fall into line. When someone says you think you're better than me, don't shrink. See it as a red flag, because they're telling you several important important things about themselves. And knowing this will help you respond wisely. The first thing they're telling you is that they lack emotional intelligence and self-awareness. An emotionally intelligent person would say something more along the lines of, I notice that I feel inadequate when I see your high standards. Can we talk about how we can work better together? Instead, they're speaking in code, making gross assumptions with this accusation and expecting you to decode their emotional state. What's more, emotionally intelligent communication uses I statements rather than you statements. And these I statements address issues directly, but respectfully, and keep the space open to dialogue rather than shutting it down, and with a focus on mutual problem solving. You can see how accusations like, you think you're better than me, don't fall into the EQ category at all. The other thing they're revealing about themselves is that they haven't done their own inner work. And rather than examining why your standards or achievements trigger them, they're trying to make their feelings your responsibility. Like I said earlier, it's easier to attack you than to address their own insecurities. The third thing is that they don't actually know you, because if they did, they'd know that your high standards and hard work are about your own values and integrity. And as we've discussed on this channel, your self-worth and validation too. So you've got your own issues to deal with here. It's not about them, and it's not about you trying to compare yourself to others. They've processed you at just a surface level and filled in the blanks with their own biases. The next red flag is that they're trying to control your behaviors through this shocking accusation, because human nature is to try to defend against it and do whatever it takes to prove the person wrong. And not only that, these types of statements could turn other people against you if there are people within earshot of hearing it. So by making you feel guilty about your standards, they're attempting to get you to dim your light and second guess yourself so that they can feel more comfortable. My next 3 videos are going to be all about feedback and how perfectionists and overachievers can process it and discern it in a healthy way in order to get positive outcomes for themselves. So now you understand where this accusation is coming from and what it reveals about the person saying it. How can you respond in the best way possible? Well, here's what not to do. Don't frantically deny it with, no, I don't think I'm better than you, because this puts them in the judge position and you now in the defendant position, which is the exact shift in the dynamic they're trying to create. So don't over-explain or justify yourself for just being yourself. And whatever you do, don't lower your standards to make them feel better. Instead, here's a communication template that maintains your boundaries while building a bridge. And I've used this not only in my personal life, but to support my clients too. So the template I've created goes like this. I hear you say you feel like I see myself as better than you. So here you're acknowledging it as their feeling, not yours, as a subjective feeling of theirs, not a universal truth. And then you can go on to say something like, that must feel really hurtful. And it's not what I intend at all. So here you're extending a measure of empathy. And then lastly, my standards are about my own values and what feels right for me. It's not about comparing myself to anyone else. Can you help me understand what I did that came across as superior so we can work better together? So in this last part, you're establishing who you are and what you're about and inviting them to find a solution rather than just sit in accusations. On the whole, this response does 4 crucial things. It validates their feeling without accepting their accusation. The second thing it does is that it clarifies your actual intention. Thirdly, it maintains your boundaries around your standards or whatever the behavior is that you're exhibiting that's triggering them. And then lastly, it invites dialogue instead of having to just defend yourself. Of course, you can adapt this and tweak it in whatever way feels natural to you. This is just a structure to give you an idea of some of the key principles that you might want to consider including in whatever you say. Here's what's important to understand. Your high standards, your hard work, your dedication are not the problem. The problem is that we live in a world that's become so comfortable with projection. Trying to hide your competence or lower your standards doesn't actually help anyone. It just enables others to avoid their own growth while robbing the world of what you have to offer. So how can we take this forward? Well, first, reflect, but not with the person who accused you, because they're too compromised. We've already discussed that they probably lack self-awareness and the ability to process their own feelings. And they have their own insecurities that they're just projecting onto you. So it's unlikely that they'll be able to give you unbiased or useful feedback. Instead, ask someone you trust, someone who sees the strengths and the beauty in your perfectionism and overachievement too, not just the downsides. You could ask them, are there ways my high standards might be coming across as judgmental? How can I ensure I'm not doing anything that directly makes others feel devalued in the pursuit of excellence and my high standards? And getting that outside view from someone who you really trust and who loves you can be so helpful. This is just to do a quick sense check, just to make sure that there aren't any blind spots you have that the person making this statement might be able to then capitalize on later. The second thing is to recognize projection when you see it. When someone claims to know what you're thinking without even asking, that is projection. When someone makes gross generalizations about you based on surface observations, that is projection. And when someone tries to make their feelings your responsibility, that's projection. Third thing, while these defensive reactions are common and predictable, they're not inevitable in all relationships. Build connections with secure, confident individuals who celebrate excellence rather than feel threatened by it. Find your people, the ones who see your high standards and say, that's inspiring, instead of, oh, you think you're better than me. And this channel is a community where you will find that. So subscribe to my newsletter, Soft Landings, to stay plugged in. You cannot control whether your standards, hard work, and passion trigger others. What you can control is how you respond. You can choose to see their accusation for what it really is, a cry for help with their own insecurities. You can maintain compassion for their struggle without taking responsibility for it. But ultimately, the people worth keeping in your life won't ask you to dim your light. If needed, they'll ask you to show them how to shine their own. Your standards aren't a personal attack on anyone else. They're a love letter to your own potential. They're a commitment to excellence that elevates everyone around you, whether they recognize it yet or not, but it does. So the next time someone says, you think you're better than me, remember, that's their insecurity talking, not your truth. Respond with grace, maintain your boundaries, and keep shining. The world needs what you have to offer at full brightness. I recommend you watch part 1 of my feedback series next, but in the meantime, keep mastering what matters most.